Welcome back. I've got Lior Weinstein on the line. Lior, how are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you today?
I am great. Really, really looking forward to this conversation because the work you do is definitely needed with entrepreneurs and everybody in between. So why don't you share a little bit about you and then we'll jump into this conversation.
Okay, perfect. So I've been an entrepreneur since I was 14. Originally born and raised in Israel, moved to the States about 14 years ago. And I grew up professionally both as a technologist and as a growth guy. So I kind of got a chance to, I guess first thing I did was engineering. Started coding at a very early age, like 4 or 5, something like that, with like DOS systems. And then when I was in high school and beyond, I started like very robust marketing and kind of sales career as well. So um, over the years, built and sold multiple companies. And what I do right now is that I join companies as a fractional chief technology officer or as a fractional chief growth officer. So either come in to lead technology or lead growth, sometimes both, mostly on upside. And I'm very passionate about it. And with that, I also teach other CTOs how to do it as well and become fractional chief technology officers.
That's amazing. And the fact that you have the technology side of things and then also kind of the branding and marketing and operations side of things, you don't typically see that. I mean, not that they don't exist, you're a perfect example of it, but those are two worlds I've seen in working in both arenas. You don't see a lot of people doing that doesn't mean they can't. And I think that's a really important point to make because I don't like people pigeonholing people into saying no they're just a techie or no they're just a bean counter or they're just it's like you can be whatever you want. It's just understanding it and all of that. So the fact that you learned how to code at a very early age, back in the DOS days, when I
Mhm.
see people today and they're coding in Python or doing anything else or game development and all that, there's a lot of text and stuff all that, but then there's still like block-based coding, like what MIT has with their Scratch program or Unity or any of those other things. But again, understanding that and this is just something an observation for myself is when you're good at that, when you're good at coding, that means you are good at problem solving, attention to
Mhm.
detail, understanding cause and effect, which again opens up so many different doors. So, the fact that you're able to do both and you can go and say, well, I can offer you these or I can offer you these, and there was like from the same person, but obviously you've been able to do it, since you were a little kid.
Yeah, and for me, it's kind of like you said, coding is really logic, right? So if you can kind of parse the problem, analyze it down to its parts, understand the relationship between each other, and then create a result, and then it's just you can apply that logic anywhere, and a lot of people do. They just don't. I think I saw over the years, I helped a lot of people get into technology, and these are people that never thought about themselves as technologists, right? Like literally like restaurant servers, nurses, stuff like that. And I gave them the confidence to pursue it. And then they realized after like, a 6 week boot camp or something, and then they go into the industry, right? They actually get like a junior position or whatever it is, and then they realize, oh, there are smart people and not so smart people in any industry. I think there's something from the outside thinking, oh, coders, engineers are like super smart, I could never do it. And I'm like, no, that's just not the case. You have levels to everything. And I think for me, I just like people more than like technology. And so inherently, I'm an entrepreneur that happens to be a CTO. I'm an entrepreneur that happens to be a chief marketing officer or a chief revenue officer. So my primary identity is really an entrepreneur, which means I see opportunities, I see potential problems to make it up and then make it real. And then I use my skill set, I use my capabilities, stuff I learned over time on how to apply it. And whatever I don't know, I use really amazing people to complete that.
Well, it's good that you've identified as an entrepreneur first because again, you see the opportunities. You go, okay, what opportunities are here to either improve something or repair something or create something that currently isn't there within an organization or even an industry. And over the last quarter century, we've seen innovation after innovation after innovation, and organizations, and I see this a lot. Where small business or even the large ones, their focal point is whatever they make, their product or their service. And
Mhm.
technology is such a critical component now that sometimes they will either try to do it in-house, but they don't necessarily have the basically the infrastructure of someone that's done it before. So let's say they hire an IT manager. That's and they
Yeah.
just
The
gave that
IT
name,
guy.
the IT guy,
Yeah.
and but they report to the chief operating officer or maybe VP of HR. They go, who should this person report to? Which is like,
Mhm.
oh boy, that's scary. And what's unfortunate for that is that person doesn't have a mentor internally. If they're smart, they've got external mentors and people they can bounce some ideas off of because in many cases, the chief operating officer may or may not have any exposure to IT. So they're
Mhm.
reporting to somebody that doesn't know anything about what you're doing.
Mhm.
And you see this time and time again. So I think that's where, the work that you do as a fractional CTO, Chief Technology Officer, for those that don't know what that acronym stands for, uh, that is really helpful for an organization because then you're getting the expertise at a senior level that can obviously allocate and delegate and get the proper resources in place for the organization to use technology properly to serve what it's doing instead of a bolt-on type of approach, which unfortunately so many organizations do, and it's like square peg round hole. It never really fits. It always seems like there's, something, a disconnect or something like that.
Yeah, and there's some key differences. There's a lot of interesting trends that are happening right now, certainly with AI. And the world is very much shifting back from buy to build. So if you think about how technology was kind of produced and leveraged early years, 80s and 90s, you basically built everything in-house. You hired engineers, you wrote code, you created product. And then uh, early 2000s, where the SaaS revolution, software as a service came, companies like Salesforce said, you know what, we'll overinvest in building a product that's relevant to a lot of businesses, and we're going to license a portion of it, right, on a per seat, per year basis, so you don't have to carry the burden of the whole engineering team and do all the thing that requires specialized work. So, but now everything is shifting almost back to build because build is cheap. You can now build stuff. You have these incredible platforms. My favorite one as of this interview is called Base 44, and I'm saying this interview because maybe 2 weeks from now that that answer is going to be different. Base44.com, where I was literally like yesterday sitting with my 9-year-old kid, and we built an entire web application for our family in like an hour and a half, just talking to it. And so the most common programming language is becoming English, and then if you have the parsing skill, the logic skills, you can leverage these things. So think about internal tools, but to really do it right, you could use the experience. Now, the reality is today, whether you like it or not, you are a tech company. You are a technology company. So unless you're in the business of plumbing, and even then I would kind of argue, besides the work of plumbing, everything else, you're a technology company, then you need to leverage technology or you're going to be left behind, and you're not going to take full advantage of the opportunities, you have to expand or manage and, own your business. And to afford somebody like me coming in from the industry, right, as at a full-time rate, one, it's not in the economics, right? You're talking about total compensation. You're kind of starting $500,000 plus seven figures in stock options and upside, because that's the opportunity cost for people that have been in the industry for a couple of decades, right? They can just go to the Amazons, the high growth startups, and leverage that. And the reality is, one, you can't afford it. B, you don't need it. Like, I don't like the amount of technology. Even a business that has, some of my clients are 50 million in revenue, 100 million in revenue, 20 million. They can't, I can't, most of my work is going to be watching paint dry if I'm just there full time, right? Especially on the C level. So we're going to talk about that a little bit, between that IT director, IT manager, IT guy, and kind of a chief, right? The key differences there. And but they can leverage my experience, because one of my decisions can save them a year or millions of dollars in doing the wrong thing. Now, a chief, as opposed to a director or a manager, well, let's generally separate between leaders and managers, right? So if managers and directors, they're there to manage an existing capability, something that's well defined, and you kind of need to make sure that it runs right, economically, right pace, and so on. Leaders are there to create new capabilities, to add capabilities to the company. And their conversation is in the context of the business vision. Where does the CEO want to take this company? Where does the board want to take this company, right? You just want to grow it as a legacy company, own it multi-generationally, grow it steady? Do you want to fast growth, maybe sell it, in 18 months, like whatever that is? You need somebody that in the area of expertise, maybe it's marketing, maybe it's technology, maybe it's finance, can basically make that dream come true in that context. So in many cases, when I go into clients, I tell them, I'm going to turn all your black boxes into glass boxes because that's what technology is for most people, right? They're like, they don't have no clue what's going on. It's just a black box. That's what they say. And then they make all these mistakes of either doing like a sub-therapeutic dose on the technology investment, right? Get an IT guy, right? Maybe pay him 70 grand a year, 100 grand a year. They're not equipped to figure out the business vision and all the potential systems and opportunities and they're not, just don't have that experience. And then on the other side, they might make another mistake, which let's just pay somebody 500 grand a year, 300 grand a year, and it's an overkill, right? It's a shotgun to kill a fly, right? So I think the fractional, not just the CTO side, fractionals across the board are such an amazing opportunity for small to mid-sized businesses because you get to tap into the experience, to the insight, the ability to like integrate very quickly, but then also have the leadership. So consultants, they give advice, right? By definition, they consult. They're not bought in. They're not, they do good work, right? They're getting paid to do work, but they're not leading a team. They're not vested in the long term automatically. They're not vested in the long-term growth of the company. They're not representing the company, at events, at the board level with employees. It's not representing company policy. So the fractional seat is different because you are all those things, just like a full-time. It's like a full-time CTO, full-time CMO. But because the business doesn't need you full time, so I kind of like to say they get the benefit of getting 100% of the outcome for a fraction of the price. Meaning the fractional doesn't describe the impact or the responsibility or the outcome. It just describes the financial cost and burden of the business and also the opportunity on the executive side to basically do this with multiple companies. So it's really a win-win across the board. And I think it's one of the most fascinating trends right now that exists in HR outside of the upcoming, AI agent workforce development.
Yeah, I agree. I've had many fractional folks on the show, mostly in, finance or marketing. And
Mhm,
again, I look at it this way from a sports analogy. They may be there for a short period of time, they may be there, ongoing, but a lot of times it's like towards the trade deadline in some of the sports. It's like, okay, this person's contract's up at the end of the year. We're going to bring them in just for this final push with hopes that we will win a championship or in business, roll out this initiative that we really need to get, really good on or start something so we can get a foundation set up so we can go forward. And there again, it gives you access to the expertise at a fraction, pardon the pun, of a cost. Because otherwise, like
mhm,
you said, you bring in C-level, you're well into the six figures in most organizations, if not
mhm,
even higher, on top of
mhm,
the benefits and all of that. And I look at it as you're not paying for the extra sit around and like you used before, stare at, paint drying. You're like, you're in here. I'm like, okay, I know I'm in here 2 days a week. Well, when I'm in there 2 days a week, guess what? I'm working. I'm going to do it. I'm going to get to it. Here's this. It seems to be kind of a silo buster in a way where it's like, okay,
mhm,
all the silos that we see in businesses that were well apparent when we were sent home 5 years ago during COVID. Well, that's when we really discovered all the silos because we were trying to navigate around them because we weren't in the same office anymore. We were all home. So
mhm,
it brought to light those silos where in a fractional type of situation, you're busting through those. You're like, I don't have time with the silos. We're not doing those. I need this, and this. And people get to it. And I find, and I'm sure the stats are out there, and I know you've seen them too,
mhm,
the performance boost of having a fractional CTO or chief marketing officer or CFO, I'm sure the ROI on that is so much higher than if somebody says, well, we're just going to hire a CFO. Well, if you hire a CFO, that's great, but are they going to have all the bells and whistles that you're looking for? Where a fractional, you can, I mean, literally part, and not to degrade the role at all,
mhm.
but you basically go, here's the menu of choices. This is what I can do, and then that's what you do. And it's been a game changer. And I know a lot of organizations that are have finally decided, okay, let's start using this, and they're they're livid with themselves that they didn't start sooner
Yeah,
because
and
Go ahead.
It's the economics are just compelling. I think, I get this question sometimes when people come into our community at CTOX, and they asked before they get into actually like getting clients and so on. But one of their concerns is, what if a client is worried about confidentiality or competitive issues? And I told them, well, one, I haven't like found that problem yet. Just like a client might hire, pay for the same service, pay for the same marketing agency, and that's in fact one of the benefits. Right? So we have like a marketing agency or technology agency. They say we specialize in dentists, right? So when you get services from them, you're getting the history, right? You're getting all the tribal knowledge, the best practices. You're getting the benefit of all the failed experiments, the failed initiative, the failed policies. And same thing with the fractional executives. Like it's very rare. I mean, I haven't personally seen it yet. It's very rare that you actually like potentially engage with two competitors, at the same time. And I would say don't do that. But otherwise, within the industry, it's a non-issue, and everybody's getting the benefit. The fractional is getting compounded insights and experience they can apply across the board, and then the client gets not just their experience and impact and outcome, but every week that fractional is getting better with the experience they get from all the other companies in a similar niche. And of course, you get the network effect, which normally you're not going to get that, with a full-time guy, because the full-time person in any position, once they join a company, that's where they are for a while, right? So their network is not nearly as big as somebody that continuously has deal flow and clients, just like, a consulting group, right? Their networks are substantial because they have deal flow. And that's the same with fractional. So they get the benefit of the experience. They don't get the burden of the cost. Also from that side, the risk is much different. And I think, like you said, CFOs is the most common fractional. It's also easier to think about it that way. I spoke with a CEO last year, and he told me, I don't understand why people hire fractionals. Like, literally told me that. And I give an example. Well, let me ask you this. I told him, I'm going to argue you have at least two fractional executives that you rely on. He's like, no, I don't. I'm like, humor me. Just give me a couple of minutes. He's like, okay. I'm like, who does your legal work? And he's like, so and so, some, New York fancy law firm. I'm like, do they work for you full time? Like, no. Do you trust them with your most, important legal decisions of your company that put your company at risk and protect you? He's like, yes. And how do you pay them? He's like, well, this firm I pay on retainer, this firm I pay hourly. I'm like, there you go. So you have fractional legal counsel, right? Some companies, enterprises have in-house general counsel, right? Or a legal team. But small to mid-sized businesses, no, you're paying an attorney hourly, you're paying an attorney, a law firm, a retainer, right? It's not intuitive to think about it. I told them same thing. Who does your taxes? Like, oh, a CPA firm. I'm like, great. Do they work for you full time? No, they have a lot of clients. I'm like, great. Do you trust them with your most sensitive data? Right? All of your income, all of your deductions, all of, employees, payroll. Like, yeah, I'm like, there you go. Fractional as well. But so these positions are more intuitive to understand that they give you dramatic value. You trust them fully with the most precious parts of your organization, but it makes perfect sense for you to not hire them full time. And once it does, and you're big, then you do that. And that's the same with fractional. Sometimes I go into companies because fractionals can either do like advice, right? Let's just, low retainer, a few hours a month, and I'm not owning anything. I'm not accountable. I'm not leading a team, but I'm giving you advice, course corrections, network, help you interview, decide, stuff like that. Or I'm full blown CTO. I'm leading the team, and and connected to the vision multiple years and so on. And but sometimes I get into a company and I'm like, you need full time. This is not going to work. There's just too many challenges, too big. It doesn't matter how much leverage I'm gonna put in here. It makes perfect sense to be full time, and or sometimes the nature of the company. Maybe you're VC backed, or you have a certain acquisition targets, whatever it is. Then the investors or the acquirers might want to see a full time team, and all these other kind of dynamics and sensitivities. But the ability to really look at your organizational chart effectively and kind of saying, okay, yeah, where does fractional make sense? Where does it not? Starting with the fact that you can appreciate that legal and taxes are inherently fractional for small to mid-sized businesses, and then just expand that thinking out. How can I tap into somebody with years of experience, multiple clients? They have all of the lessons, none of the scars. They can collapse decades, in learning. And make me effective, and then rebuild. How you think about how you rebuild your leadership team, and how you and maybe it's assisted sometimes. I guess last comment on that, we get a client, we get companies come to us and ask us for a fractional CTO, right? At CTOX. And I literally had a customer call, a prospect call last week, and it's a company out of Florida, and he's describing like 30 engineers in Central America, some in the US, elaborate operation. And then I asked him, I realized, oh wait, are you the CTO? He's like, yeah. I'm like, oh, so what are you looking for? He's like, I'm looking for an advisor. They want to do some AI stuff. He's not an AI guy, right? So he wants somebody that has the experience and can do the shortcuts, but at his level, not like a director of engineering, not like a super developer, at his level of leadership and vision and technical prowess. So that's also very common. Just kind of how can you augment your leadership team with fractional executives with experience and hands-on, with different initiatives in the industry, so they can be up to date, so they can have confidence, so they can, to your point, have somebody to talk to, even if you're not ready to, make them accountable and own full parts of the company.
No, I love that story, and as you're talking about it, the the CPA firm and the law firm, I thought about, a lot of small businesses, they have an IT vendor that they use. Are they there every
Hmm.
day? No, they're just there kind of behind the scenes and occasionally come in for updates. Okay, well, they're fractional. Or the cleaning crew that cleans your offices. Are they there all day? No, they just
That's
come in
it.
at night.
Oh, I love cleaning crew. I'm going to use that. That's a good idea.
Yeah, yeah, it's like
Uh,
you have a fractional cleaning crew. It's we've used them for years, and we don't even think twice about it. It's like, would you hire, this cleaning person to be on your site 24/7 all day? Well, depending on the type of organization you run, the
If you're a
answer,
school, you probably need a full-time custodian to,
of course,
to help
yeah.
with that.
Yeah, they're and just make sure they're not really good at dodgeball. I remember the custodian. He was really good at dodgeball whenever we would play, and yeah, of course, here's a bunch of school age kids, and here's a grown adult. It's like, ease up on the,
Blasting them.
yeah, ease up on the arm, Nolan Ryan. Come on, man, don't be doing that. It's like that. That's gonna leave
Yeah.
marks. But no, it's such an important option and opportunity for so many businesses that can leverage the expertise and get access to it because, as you said earlier, it's critically important for everybody to get on board with the fact that we're pretty much all tech companies now. Yes, the plumbing, but you know what? You need a CRM to track it, inventory control, all of these moving parts, is leveraging technology. If you're still doing the paper spreadsheet and adding machine and all that stuff, it's like, yeah, when that person that does that for you retires, good luck finding somebody that will want to do it that way. They're going to look at you and go, "Did I, you know, did I get in a DeLorean and get into a time machine and go back in time?" Because that's not going to work anymore. It's not how we are. And I think
Hmm.
that, again, with AI, is a great example of it. You blink and there's something new out. I'm sure you get all the newsletters and you see all the things and all the innovations. And we'll look at ChatGPT for a second. Look at it today compared to what it looked like a year ago. It-
Hmm.
Completely. I mean, the premise of it the same, but as far as what it's doing in the background,
Oh, dramatically different.
completely different. It is a different beast. The DNA is completely different. So
Hmm.
you got to be on board with that. And that organization that reached out to you from the Sunshine State, they get it. They're like, we want to add this. We don't have the kernel or the current know how to do it. And that CTO is like, I don't have time to learn how to be an AI based CTO. So we got to bring somebody in that can help us do what we need to do. So that's why it's so important to find people like yourself and your team to help these organizations out. So love this conversation, Lara. Where can people find out about you and all this amazing work you're doing?
First of all, I'd love to connect on LinkedIn, Lior Weinstein. See my gray hair smiling somewhere in the profile photo. And if you're a CTO and you're thinking about this as a career transition or maybe a side income, please visit us at ctox.com. If you're a CEO, they're thinking, man, I should really explore this, then please reach out to us. We will have a conversation, most likely with me. And I'm going to learn about your business, help you figure out, is this the right fit, not a right fit? Do you need somebody to actually own? You need somebody to give you advice. And then once we understand your niche, we have right now over 150 CTOs in the program. They can support 700, 800 companies. And we just introduce you. You're gonna tell me if you want one person, two people, three people, and I'm gonna make an email introduction, and then hopefully they'll be your technology partner for the next few years, helping you with transformations.
It's amazing. I'll definitely have all that in show notes. So, Lior, thank you again for being you and all this amazing work. It's making the world a much better place. So, thanks again for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.